I found hundreds of photos of myself, sleeping, showering, changing. My neighbor had cut a hole in our wall. For 4 months, he crawled through every night, just to watch me. Someone was following me home. Every night, he got closer. First under a bridge, then 3 blocks away, then in my bushes, and then he was at my bedroom window. Every time Margaret rose from holding a knife, my heart skipped a beat. I couldn't help but wonder each time, who would be next and what would happen? My neighbor always seemed friendly. That was until I found a folder he accidentally dropped outside his door. Inside were dozens of photos of me, taken through my windows at night. This happened 2 years ago. I was 24 and had just moved to Portland, Oregon. My company transferred me from Seattle, and I rented a small apartment in a city where I knew absolutely no one. It was an old but well-maintained building in the Hawthorne district. I lived on the 2nd floor of a 3-story building in the corner unit. During my first week, I started meeting my neighbors. An elderly couple lived across the hall, Mr. and Mrs. Patterson. A family with kids lived downstairs. But the one I remember most was the man in the unit next to mine. His name was Derek, mid-30s, quiet demeanor. When we first met, he smiled, extended his hand, and said, "Welcome to the building. If you ever need anything, just knock." The first few months were completely normal. Derek and I would exchange greetings in the hallway or on the stairs. Sometimes we'd have brief conversations. When I asked what he did for work, he said he was a freelance photographer. Work from home. I rarely saw him leave, but I attributed that to his profession that I started noticing strange things in November. One night, I got up to get water from the kitchen and saw a light coming from the fire escape side, like a camera flash. It flickered once and disappeared. I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was headlights from a passing car. But over the next few days, I saw that flash several more times. Always after midnight. Always when I was in my room. Had to be coincidence. Around then, Derek's behavior started changing too. He began asking questions. When I left for work, whether I stayed home on weekends, how often my family visited. He listened to my answers too carefully, like he was taking mental notes. One Thursday evening, coming home from work, I found a folder in the apartment hallway. Brown, ordinary looking, right outside Derek's door. I bent down to pick it up and a photo slid out. I saw my own face. My hands turned ice cold. I pulled out the photo. It was me, standing in my bedroom, wearing only my underwear in front of the mirror. Taken at night, from inside my room. I opened the folder and my stomach turned. At least 50 photos. All of me, getting out of the shower, sleeping, undressing. Some were taken so close that the photographer should have felt my breath. But the most terrifying ones were in the back, taken while I slept, from right beside my bed. In one of them, Derek's hand was visible, reaching toward my face, stroking my hair. My world went dark. I clutched the folder to my chest and ran to my apartment, locked the door, put on the chain. When I turned around, I checked every corner. Was he here right now? Was he watching me? I looked at the dates on the photos. The oldest was from 4 months ago, 2 weeks after I moved in. This man had been entering my room for 4 months, coming to my bedside while I slept, touching my face, and I had felt nothing. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. Then I got in the shower, started scrubbing myself in scalding water until my skin turned red, but I couldn't feel clean. His hands felt like they'd touched everywhere. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but then I stopped. What if they didn't believe me? What if they said there wasn't enough evidence? I needed more. I had to stay in my apartment that night. I needed to know how he was getting in. My door was always locked, windows closed. I grabbed the biggest knife from the kitchen, turned on every light, and started waiting. At 2 a.m., I heard sound, not from the door. It was coming from inside the wall. The sound was coming from inside the wall. A scratching noise, then a soft creak. I stared at the wall between my bedroom and Derek's apartment. It came from the corner behind my closet. I gripped the knife tight and approached, slowly pushed the closet aside, and I saw it. It was a panel in the wall, It looked like a ventilation grate, but it wasn't. The edges were freshly cut. The paint still new. I watched it slowly swing open and covered my mouth with my hand to keep from screaming. Derek's eyes stared at me from the darkness. "Shoo," he whispered. "Don't be scared. I was just watching you." I stumbled backward. Derek slid through the wall into my room. The hole was wide enough for a person to fit through. How many nights had he crawled through that hole into my room? How many nights had he stood beside my bed? "You found a folder, didn't you?" he said calmly, like he was discussing the weather. I was careless, but it doesn't matter anymore. I ran for the door, but Derek was faster. He grabbed my arm and slammed me against the wall. The knife fell from my hand. He brought his face close to mine. His breath was warm. His eyes were gleaming. "I've been watching you for 4 months," he said. "Every night, every breath, every move. I lay beside you while you slept. I smelled your hair. I touched your skin. And you never woke up." I screamed. I screamed with everything I had. But no one came. Derek laughed. "The soundproofing in this building is excellent," he said. "Trust me, I tested it." I drove my knee into his stomach. He stumbled back in pain. I ran to the door, tried to unlock it. My hands were shaking. I couldn't get the chain off. Derek approached from behind, grabbed my hair, and slammed my head against the door. Everything went black. I collapsed. The last thing I remember was Derek lifting me in his arms and carrying me toward the hole in the wall. And his whisper, "Now we'll be together forever." I woke up in darkness. My hands were tied behind my back. My feet too. There was cloth in my mouth. As my eyes adjusted, I looked around and my blood ran cold. The walls of Derek's apartment were covered with photographs. Hundreds, maybe thousands. All of me. But I wasn't the only one. There were other women too. At least 5 different faces. Some photos had red X marks over them. Derek sat in the corner, watching me. "You're awake," he said with a smile. The others didn't wake up this fast. The word "others" echoed in my brain. I looked at the X-marked faces on the wall. "Don't worry," Derek said. "They disappointed me. You're different. You're perfect." That's when the glass shattered. The door was kicked in. Portland police. They were raiding the apartment. Mrs. Patterson had heard my screams and called 911. The soundproofing wasn't as good as Derek thought. Derek tried to run, headed for the fire escape, but the officers caught him there, pushed him to the ground, and cuffed him. I learned later that Derek's real name wasn't even Derek. His actual name was Raymond Mills. He was a suspect in 2 missing women cases in California. Before moving to Portland, he'd lived in San Francisco. The women with X marks on their faces on those walls. Police are still searching. I survived. I escaped this nightmare. But every night, I see those eyes emerging from that hole. I feel his hand stroking my hair. I hear his breath on the back of my neck. I left Portland, moved back to Ohio to be near family. But I still check the walls every night before I sleep. I wake up at every small sound. I look at every new neighbor with suspicion. Raymond Mills got life in prison, but they still haven't found those other women on the wall. And sometimes I wonder, how many more directs are out there? How many more hidden panels? How many more holes in walls? That neighbor sitting next to you right now, that kind man smiling at you. Who is he really? Check your walls. Because sometimes the shortest distance is the thin wall between 2 apartments. After my night shift, I always took the same route home. That night, I saw someone under the bridge. The next night, they were in the same spot. The third night, they weren't there, because now they were across from my house. This happened a few years ago. I was 26 and working the night shift at a warehouse in Sacramento, California. My shift started at 11 p.m. and ended at 7 a.m. My drive home was always the same. Exit the main road, pass through the industrial area, drive under the old railroad bridge, then enter my neighborhood. It was a 20-minute drive. I loved that route because there was no traffic at that hour. Just me, empty roads, and the silence of the city. For 6 months, I'd taken the same route every night. Everything was routine. Everything was normal. The first night I saw him was mid-October. As I drove under the bridge, my headlights illuminated a figure. He was leaning against the bridge support, completely still. I couldn't see his face, just his silhouette. He wore a hooded jacket. He was so motionless that for a moment I thought he was a mannequin. But then his head turned slightly. Following my car, a chill ran through me. But I told myself, probably just a homeless person. In Sacramento, people lived under bridges. It was normal. I hit the gas and drove past. The next night, I passed through at the same time. And he was there again. Same bridge support. Same hooded jacket. Same motionless stance. This time I looked more carefully as my car approached. Again, his head turned. Again, he watched my CT felt strange, but I still searched for logical explanations. Maybe he lived there. Maybe he'd been there every night, but I just hadn't noticed before. People can be invisible in the dark. The third night, when my shift ended, it was rainy and cold. As I approached the bridge, I turned on my high beams. I scanned underneath. No one was there that I felt relieved. Maybe he'd left. Maybe he'd moved somewhere else. But as I got closer to home, that relief turned to pure fear. 3 blocks from my house, I saw him. The same hooded figure, standing under a streetlight at the edge of the sidewalk. His face was still in darkness. But the body type, the posture, everything was the same. It was the man from the bridge. My heart started pounding in my chest. This couldn't be a coincidence. The bridge was at least 15 minutes from my house. By car, walking would take at least an hour. How had he gotten here before me? I hit the gas and drove past. I looked in my rearview mirror. The man had turned and was watching the back of my car. He wasn't moving, just watching. I went inside, locked the door, put on the chain, closed all the curtains. I was afraid to look out the window. What if he was still out there? What if he'd followed me all the way home and was waiting? I couldn't sleep that night. I jumped at every footstep, every car sound. I couldn't close my eyes until morning. The next day, I tried to think rationally. Maybe it was someone different. Maybe 2 different people wearing similar clothes. I tried to calm myself down. I went to work. I did my shift. At 7 p.m., my shift ended. I got in my car. This time I decided to try a different route. I wouldn't go under the bridge. I chose a longer but more populated route. It took 25 minutes to get home. As I entered my neighborhood, I took a deep breath. Everything was normal. The streets were empty. Nothing to worry about. I parked in front of my house, got out of the car, pulled out my keys. That's when I saw movement behind the bushes across from my house. The hooded figure was there, watching me from between the bushes. He was only 30 feet away. I screamed and ran to the house, slammed the door behind me, turned the locks. When I looked out the window, no one was behind the bushes. He was gone. I called the police. They came, checked the area. They didn't find anyone. The officer told me, probably just a homeless person won't hurt you. But I knew this man was following me. And every night, he was getting closer. For the next few days, I took different routes home. Every time I checked my surroundings, every time I looked in my rearview mirror, I didn't see him. Maybe he'd given up. Maybe I was just being paranoid. On the 4th night, I felt safer. As I walked to my car after my shift, I noticed something strange in a warehouse parking lot. There was something on my windshield, a piece of paper tucked under the wipers. My hand trembled as I took it. It had only one sentence written on it. "Blue looks so good on you at night." I was wearing my blue work uniform that night. This man had been here, in the warehouse parking lot. He'd found my workplace. I ran back inside the warehouse, told security. They checked the cameras. No one was visible in the parking lot, just a shadow for a moment. A hooded figure with his back to the camera. Then he disappeared into the darkness. I couldn't go home that night. I stayed at the warehouse. The next day, I went to the police station. I filed an official report, but all I had was a piece of paper and a blurry security image. "There's not much we can do," they said. The next night, I had to go home. I'd slept during the day and felt a bit stronger. At 8 p.m., while it was still light out, I came home. Everything was normal. Neighbors were outside. The street was quiet. I went inside, locked the doors, took a relieved breath. At 11 p.m., I got into bed, tried to sleep, but at 2 a.m., I woke to a sound. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from my bedroom window. My heart started racing. I slowly got out of bed, approached the curtain, peeked out from one corner. He was standing right outside my window. His face was only inches from glass. His hood had fallen back. For the first time, I saw his face. He was smiling. I screamed and fell backward, grabbed my phone, called 911. When I looked at the window again, he was gone. The police arrived within 5 minutes, but the man had already disappeared. They found footprints in the dirt outside my window. And one more thing, hanging on my doorknob was a rope. At the end was a key, my spare house key. Where had he gotten the key? I never had a spare key made for my house. Then I remembered. 3 months ago, I'd lost my key. I found it the next day under my doormat. I thought I dropped it, but he hadn't lost it. That man had taken it and made a copy. For 3 months, he could have entered my house. Maybe he had. Maybe while I was sleeping, he'd come inside, watched me, and left. I couldn't stay home that night. I went to a motel. I didn't sleep until morning. The next day, police found the man, but not by chance. The man revealed himself. My neighbors saw him digging a hole in my backyard and called the police. The man's name was Richard Chase, 44 years old. He lived alone, and he had been following and watching 12 different women for years. According to his confession to police, he would enter his victims' homes while they slept, watch them, touch their belongings, then leave without a trace. He had followed some victims for months, even years. I was the 12th victim. According to what he told police, he would wait under the bridge every night. He would learn their routines, find their workplaces, steal their keys, enter their homes, and stay inside for hours. He would watch their faces while they slept, touch their hair, take pictures, but he never physically harmed them. He just watched. I was in love with them, he said in his statement. I was protecting them. I was with them every night. Richard Chase received a total of 25 years in prison for multiple home invasions, stalking, menacing, and unlawful entry. No chance of parole. He will remain in the high-security section of California State Prison for the rest of his life. But I still see that smile. Every night, in every dark corner, in every hooded figure. I left Sacramento, moved to another state, quit the night shift. Now I only work during the day. My doors are always locked. I have no spare key. I don't hide keys anywhere. But sometimes late at night, when I'm walking down the street, I turn around. Sometimes when I park my car, I look in the rearview mirror. Sometimes at night, I wake up and look at the window. And every time, I think the same thing. What if I'm not so lucky next time? If you feel like someone is following you, please take it seriously. That feeling, that instinct, that shiver, your body might be warning you. You're not paranoid, because sometimes that shadow is real, and it might be digging a hole for you. Note, the person who told this story requested anonymity, so a different name was used. Location and some details have also been changed for privacy. However, these types of stalking cases do happen in real life and are very serious crimes. Margaret had, in her final weeks, withdrawn into a strange silence. She would sit alone in every corner of our house, as if speaking to someone unseen. At first, we noticed she was only talking to her deceased sister, Emily. "All right, Emily, I'll be there soon," she would say. Her voice was calm, yet carried a subtle chill that made our skin crawl. At first, we tried to explain it as old age and loneliness, but our unease grew with each passing day. One evening, in the dim light of the living room, Margaret was staring at an old photograph and whispered, "Emily, have you come again?" Her eyes, fixed on the photo, seemed to be looking at someone dead rather than alive. In that moment, I realized that Emily's death was directly connected to Margaret's strange conversations. But things were about to get even stranger. Charles, her only living brother, had come into town a few days earlier. Margaret was nearly silent in his presence. Yet one night, she suddenly began speaking to him. "Charlie, I'll be with you soon." With those words, the atmosphere in the room shifted. A sudden coldness spread. Charles looked at Margaret, filled with fear and disbelief. "Grandma, what do you mean?" Margaret only nodded slightly. Her gaze held a depth and eerie wisdom that could not be explained by age alone. Yes, we left the room that night. We heard footsteps, door creaks, and a distant whisper echoing through the house. "Chai or lie? I'm here." Margaret didn't react at all, as if these sounds were perfectly normal. It was then that we realized this was no mere sign of aging. It was the first indication of death. By morning, the atmosphere in the house had changed. We tried to comprehend what we had seen, but logic failed. Margaret's quiet whispers signaled an approaching nightmare and an unknown terror. This was only the beginning. The next morning, the sharp ring of the phone pierced the living room, and my heart leapt into my throat. With trembling hands, I picked up the receiver. On the other end was a woman, her voice pale and frantic. "Mr. Charlie was killed in an accident last night. You need to come immediately." The words echoed my mind. For a moment, everything seemed frozen, as if time itself had stopped. Margaret sat beside us, eyes closed, enveloped in a serene, almost otherworldly calm. Yet a faint, strange smile lingered on her face, as though she had known everything beforehand. From that moment, the atmosphere in the house shifted. Door hinges creaked, footsteps echoed from the stairs, and a distant whisper floated through the air. "Caerly, I'm here." The house played a silent, cold symphony of death. Margaret continued to sit without reacting, yet her eyes shone with a dark wisdom. By midday, Margaret became even more silent and suddenly whispered to me, "Sometimes death is not just a message, it's a warning, and sometimes we don't have time to understand that message." The calm in her voice sent chills down my spine. At that moment, I realized that Margaret's ability to communicate with the dead didn't only reveal the past, it also showed glimpses of the future. By evening, we felt even stranger disturbances in the house. The television turned on by itself, cold drafts swept through the rooms, and the door to Charles's room creaked open slightly. Margaret stood quietly in the middle of the room, as if she had anticipated everything. That night, we saw the full extent of Margaret's gift for speaking with the dead. This ability was no longer merely an echo of the past. It was a signal of impending tragedy. Every whisper drew us deeper into a fear we could barely comprehend. The house seemed trapped under the heavy shadow of silence and death, and all we could do was wait, powerless, as events unfolded. Margaret's eyes looked at us as if she already knew the dark events to come. But one question echoed relentlessly in my mind. After Charles's death, whose name would be called next? That day, the entire family had gone to Charlie's funeral. The house was swallowed by silence. Only Margaret and I remained. But the silence brought no peace. On the contrary, in the corners of the rooms there was a weight, a coldness that took our breath away. The presence left behind by Charlie's death seemed to be with us. Margaret sat in the armchair, her eyes glinting in the dark room. "Can you see me?" she whispered. Her voice carried a calmness, yet an unsettling determination. I couldn't answer. My throat was tight. Suddenly, a pale silhouette appeared in the corner of the living room. Charlie, but his face was not as I remembered. His eyes were empty, his breath absent. Each of his steps changed the air in the room, spreading a cold draft with every movement. My heart raced. Margaret remained still, as if she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. "You have to face them," she whispered. "But if you let fear take over, they will control you completely." Charlie's shadow drifted through the room. Every movement reflected across the walls. His whispers echoed in my ears. "Margaret, Charlie, here alone." The house became a narrow, cold nightmare in an instant. Margaret lightly touched my arm. "Sometimes the dead don't leave, they just wait. But tonight, you must confront them with your courage," she said. As the night progressed, Charlie's presence grew stronger. The rooms filled with whispers and icy shadows. Margaret's silence and her deep, knowing gaze made me feel the thin line between life and death. One thing was certain. This nightmare was only beginning, and the dead were here with us. When we were left alone in the house, Margaret's breathing was heavy and deep, but it was more a sign of waiting than of calm. In the living room, under the flickering light of the lamp, the shadows didn't just cling to the walls. They seemed to seep into the very depths of the room. Suddenly, all the lights went out, replaced by a dim, gray darkness. "She's watching me," Margaret said quietly, her voice calm, not with fear, but with a composed acceptance. At that moment, something floated in the air. The photograph on the table suddenly toppled and shattered. Then, from all corners of the house, a heavy, deep breathing began. This was not Charlie. It felt more like a void, a lost presence reminding us it existed. My heart was pounding, but Margaret didn't move. "Don't make eye contact with it," she said. "If you give in to fear, it won't let you go." Suddenly, the air in the room twisted. The walls shuddered, the lamp swayed, and it felt as if a breathing entity was circling us. Margaret grabbed my arm. Her hands were icy cold, but I had no strength left to resist. "Margaret, don't go," I murmured, but she only looked at me and nodded. Her eyes held a wisdom that seemed to see the unseen. Then, silence returned suddenly with a shocking impact. The house froze in stillness. Margaret closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Facing the past isn't easy, but it can no longer stay here. It has found peace." We, the ones left in the room, breathed shakily. The atmosphere in the house had returned to normal, but inside me, I could still feel the boundaries of death, and that they could only be crossed with human courage. That night, the merciless reality of confronting fear, solitude, and death was etched into my mind.